Welcome to the Red Beard Embodiment Podcast. I am your host, Alex Greene, and I'm on a mission to bring the power of embodiment to people all around the world. In this podcast, we explore how embodiment practices, trauma healing, and knowledge about the human nervous system can help us find our ground, discover new sources of meaning, and create connection in an ever-changing world. The deepest change is embodied change.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm sitting down again with Anna Sólyom, and Anna, we connected about a month or two ago, and we did a recording about her whole story with about dynamic craniosacral therapy and compassionate inquiry, TRE, and ancestral medicine. And since that earlier recording, Anna has officially, and we mentioned this in the podcast, but she's joined the Red Beard team, and she's been offering 3 services: TRE, compassionate inquiry, that's Gabor Mate's work, and something called ancestral medicine. And ancestral medicine is what the focus of today's conversation is going to be about. Anyway, Anna, thanks for sitting down for another conversation. I remember enjoying last time.
Thank you, Alex, and good morning, everyone. I'm super excited. This is a topic that is one of my passions, so I'm really happy to share what is ancestral medicine, because this is something that we can ask. Do our ancestors have a medicine for us? And I think they do, because actually the history of humanity is quite long if we think about it. Now, it has started, we don't exactly know when, but very long time ago. This is absolutely sure.
Yeah. Well, and so let me just share, I mean, you're going to be the expert on this, but I'm just going to share a little bit of my own. I consider myself like newly very interested, and I only know of ancestral medicine through you, and I haven't even had a session yet. I'll talk about that. I'm going to be doing it, but it's really captured my interest in these last weeks, and so I just thought I'd share a little bit about kind of why it's kind of revved me up a little bit, and then have a bunch of questions for you as somebody who's done it.
Super. Whenever we have a personal experience, I think that's the best to start with, because this is the raw material, our own life.
Right, exactly. Well, so just briefly, and you can share more about the founder, but this body of work comes out of look at us go. Comes out of the work of Daniel Foor, who is an American. I think he's now based in Europe, but American-born psychotherapist and doctor of psychology, marriage and family therapist, but who also, and I've been reading his book, the one we just showed, some of his own deep interest into, his own sort of was led to sort of investigating ancestor reverence traditions, both from his own genealogical heritage of Western Europe, but also how that shows up today cross-culturally in Native American indigenous traditions, African indigenous traditions, Asian indigenous traditions, etc. And we'll talk more about, what's all included. But what I'm loving about this book, I'm not even done yet. I'm doing a podcast while I'm so green. But what I'm really appreciating with Daniel's presentation is it's almost as though he's a combination of a practitioner, but also as though like an anthropologist or somebody who has looked at some of the existence of the prevalence of ancestral, of relating to ancestors throughout the world, and in this book, in his method, as I am beginning to understand it, is a bit of looking at some of the common principles and themes that can be widely applied to anyone, independently of sort of being of within a particular religious tradition or whatnot. And so I'm really appreciate. So part of the reason I'm excited is that there's this sort of common sense approach that he seems to be offering, and I'm appreciating his sort of that, like TRE. We had this conversation that there's a little bit of taking something and opening up a methodology that can be worked with in multiple frameworks, doesn't require a specific set of religious principles or beliefs, and I always appreciate that anytime we see that. So the last thing I'll share before asking you about it is, or the other thing the other reason this is grabbing my attention is that in my work with internal family systems model, which is parts work, which is a lot of what I do with my online clients these days, so we're working with our own history, often in the form of our own parts in our inner landscape, or our inner family, often child parts, but could be protectors, teenage parts. And we have, this model suggests that, we have many parts and personalities that make up sort of who we are. But within the work that we do in internal family systems, a not uncommon situation is we look at something that's been happening in a family culture, a family history, whether that's a belief that's sort of a family belief that's kind of sometimes it's a positive belief, but usually it's sort of like some kind of not great belief or sort of some aspect of the family culture. Sometimes it's an addiction, alcoholism or something that seems to be a family trait. And when we work with that in IFS, we're often we're talking, the concept we use is something called legacy burden. And it's this idea that the issue didn't originate within that person in this lifetime, but it has its roots going backwards in time, and it even provides a framework for doing some of that work. And in my own sessions, we sometimes are verging on sort of connecting to and dialoguing with people who are no longer alive, basically, people in the family lineage. And so the big door that's been open for me reading this material and knowing it through you is a framework for actually going more wholeheartedly into those types of relationships and conversations, and the use of and creating a ritual space in order to have those important kinds of connections and dialogue and healing work. So anyway, that's just an overview on kind of where I'm coming from in a position of wanting to learn a lot more about this way of working. So with that very long introduction, what do you have to say, Anna?
Thank you, Alex. I think you brilliantly resumed what is it about. And I think I understand it this way as well, that it is, Daniel made a brilliant work of collecting our cultural heritage, all of humanity, I would say, because connecting with our ancestors is a very special, I would say, rituals as well, because from the Aboriginal cultures, the indigenous cultures, it is something very natural to connect with our ancestors. It has never separated from our lives as much as it did in our Occidental culture. So what creates the difficulty is a rupture in the traditions. And if we go back enough in time, all of us, all of our ancestors have been indigenous in a certain land. They may have lost this land, they may have lost the connections they had. And this creates grief. So one of my great discoveries when I engaged in this work was that I think all humanity is sitting on the top of a pile of a great grief. All those tears we haven't grieved away, or we haven't allowed to cross our bodies, our emotional bodies, our lineages. So it's like a big pile of things that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger because everyone is adding something to that. So it's like this big snowball that keeps rolling, and maybe sometimes keeps entering in our own lives in a very different way that we would like it to enter our own lives. And this is the core of ancestral lineage practice, or ancestral lineage healing, as we call it, to get in conversation with all those who passed away, which is very interesting, and it's also very delicate, because if we didn't learn about it, I haven't learned about it only through religions now, that my family has some religions that were influencing my childhood as well. That happens with most of us, that we're born in a certain family, and with that being born there, we are receiving a cultural heritage through lineages. And I find it really beautiful that there is a framework with 7 easy steps that we can follow, and it doesn't matter what our belief system is. What really matters is that if we are capable to respect the ritual that we are going to do, or if we are clear enough in our intention, or all the things that we engage with when we're looking for answers, that we don't know what is happening, why is this pattern is happening again in my life, or did it happen also in my grandfather's life or grandmother's life? Because I think that many times we get engaged with happenings or experiments that are neither new, neither newborn, in the sense of that it's been accompanying us since a very long period of time, and our families remember that. So it's like revealing family secrets. It's one of the most difficult things that usually runs in the family until one member of the family decides, okay, I'm stepping in that role because I can't handle anymore that there is a secret. I love you so much. This is what Bert Hellinger says, the founder of Family Constellation, that because of the order of love, someone will always take that place that nobody wants to recognize in the family system. So this is what happens also. And ancestral medicine or ancestral lineage healing makes some very important distinctions that I was not aware before encountering this practice, and which made a lot of sense, and is a foundation of my work whenever I work with anything connected to ancestral medicine or intergenerational, transgenerational traumas, which is that there are 4 principles that Daniel mentioned. He also mentions in his book. I'm going to read it because I don't want to give other words than he did. So he says, these are things we can possibly agree with, like common knowledge. In every culture, we find this common knowledge. Consciousness continues after death. Something continues. We don't know what, but something is there to exist in a certain way. We're not aware of how. Then, not all of the dead are equally well. What does this mean? It means that those who are deceased may not be well as anyone who is living may not be well. Because alive in another way, but life continues. And then the third one is the living and the dead can communicate. I think this is really easy to believe because we all had dreams with our grandmothers and grandfathers, or any other family members or friends who have deceased. Now we see a butterfly of someone after having gone to the cemetery and staying with someone who we really loved, and then a butterfly comes and we may think that, oh, thank you. So the message is received. And so also the construction of our mind with our beliefs creates also the connection. So it makes it possible that we feel connected. And the fourth is that living and the dead can strongly affect each other. And this is a belief that also exists in various religions. And the fifth one is that both of us are capable of change, those who are alive and those who are deceased. Which means that if we can strongly affect each other, maybe if someone deceased is not well enough yet energetically, I may not want that family member in my personal energy, in my personal space, which means that I may need to learn how to put very effective boundaries, just like in life. I mean, with those things that we see, right? When we need to rest, we rest. We don't allow everyone to come at home when we really want to be alone. So it's really like a personal hygiene of our personal space when we speak about that. And these are the 4 or 5 pillars, really.
Yeah, well, I liked those 5 pillars in my reading too. It's useful, just very simple kind of axioms. It's like, well, these are. I mean, and now personally, I'm not sure that everybody has had those experiences or shares that belief. So I don't want to imply that. So you use the term common knowledge, and I would agree that there's, and he part of what I like about Daniel is he kind of did some research, like, well, 64% of Americans believe in that, so he kind of, so I agree with you that it's very common, but I don't want to, but there may be listeners who say, well, I don't believe that consciousness occurs.
But that's super. Thank you, Alex, for making that correction. But that's the risk of generalizing anything, basically, that there might be someone who is not included.
Right. But in any case, these are sort of so it's like these are the foundational, beliefs, and I liked how simple they were. Right. There is something when you're dead. There's something continuing. Not everybody who's dead is equally well. Their communication is possible, and there's the strong influence between the two of them. And so, if you buy into these principles, now suddenly a lot of possibilities open up as to, well, what's the work that can be done, and that to me is sort of the sum of the potency. It's like, if this framework feels right, now suddenly some possibilities that are it opens up a whole new realm.
Yes,
I liked. I think it was the principle number 2 or whatever. Not everybody who is dead is equally well. And I liked the distinction that he made, something like that. Sometimes they use ancestor. Sometimes the term ancestor might refer to somebody in the positive sense that they are well in spirit, that they have a loving relationship towards humanity and maybe even their specific lineage. And then the ones that are unwell are, might not use the term they're not yet sort of an ancestor, because there's some healing work or unresolved. There's something that's not completed within their energy body or whatnot. Does that distinction? Did I get it correctly? How he was meaning? Yeah,
absolutely. I usually use the term deceased, or those who passed away, and the ancestors. Of course, everyone is our ancestors, but there is a process of ancestralization. There is a time frame. Many cultures still remember how to do that, or what it requires for someone deceased to become an ancestor. What are the rituals that one needs to proceed with, or which family member needs to do what. So this is basically the rite of passage, no? that we really have lost in the time, I think, because there are some rite of passages also in the religions, in the religious sense, when we go to the synagogue, or when we go to the church and pay for the masses of the loved ones. So there are a lot of ways to remember those who have deceased, but getting an actual connection with them may offer us the revelation that there are some deceased souls who never found a way to become an ancestor, because they need some help from our side, from those who are alive. And what is this help? Well, maybe the help that is needed is to connect with a healthy ancestor who have lived, maybe who has lived. I said have because sometimes these healthy ancestors show up in a mass. So it's not just one person, but
a group,
like a bunch of grandmothers and grandfathers are already really
a team of
Yeah,
elders.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because so this is the thing. So we're not individuals. We don't individually existing in this world. We could not survive one day on our own. I mean, without food, without the drinks, without the human connections, without the earth sustaining us. So there's an interconnectedness between the visible and the invisible beings, and our family and their extended family, like animal friends or invisible deceased or ancestors or deceased family. They're also part of it. So there is a sustain already in our bodies. This is when Thich Nhat Hanh beautifully describes in his book, The Other Shore, that this body has never died. And truly, this body has never died because it is a continuation of my grandmothers and my grandfathers through the birth.
Yeah.
You know? So this is in some way the same DNA. No? This is what we do, the DNA research, how we came from.
Sure.
So this is, I think it's a beautiful metaphor that the interconnectedness is living. And when the healing happens, we usually think about in terms of what can I do? So like the individual, what is my responsibility? I am going to do the healing. And then you enter this framework and the realization is that the only thing you need to do is to show up. You don't need to do the healing. You don't get to do the healing. Those ancestors who are already well, they are going to help you to heal all the family lineage, all that lineage that you engage to work with from the back of the time until it arrives to you and then to your children. So this is something really beautiful also because in other practices I've met, and there are many practices of working with ancestors and they are all good. They're all good. So if somebody is engaged in some other practice, please continue with that because everything has the meaning that which touches you. This is what you really need. This is out of doubt. But in this practice, it really are the ancestral guides who are energetically well, who carry on the healing work, which is, when I experienced it, it was a huge revelation. Like somebody has taken off a weight from my shoulder, like, oh, this is not my job. Thank you. So it offers a freedom from carrying all the weight that maybe has been carried in the family line, in that particular lineage since centuries.
Right. I have a number of questions. Let me just pick one. I guess maybe just personally for you, what led you? Did you have an interest in ancestral work or I mean there's a lot of words that sort of seem related, like an animism is the idea that the world around us is imbued with spirit, the plants and trees and rocks and rivers, and so animism and paganism, many of these sort of, or a term that Daniel uses, earth worshiping religions or just earth-based religions, I forget the term. And so I'm curious, even for you, Anna, is your finding of this body of work, is that on top of sort of some previous, explorations or involvement in some way? Yeah.
Yes, I think the answer is yes, because already I've been engaged in different healing and processes, to say so, since I was 16. So Reiki, meditation, we spoke about it in another podcast. And I always had the sensation that something is going on in my family that I can't resolve. Just to mention that one part of my family is Jewish, and we have lost at least half of the family in the Second World War. And this is a tremendous grief that neither of my grandparents who survived could deal with. It was impossible. So there are very different ways that life invites us to actually take a look at where we have come from. And I've been involved or tried or did family constellation and many other ways to work with ancestors.
Yeah.
And then it was through craniosacral therapy that I met with someone who spoke about Danielle's work during the first pandemic year. But in that time, what I felt that there are some issues that I am incapable to solve. I don't understand them and I am suffering from them, but I am not in the place to resolve it. I don't know if you ever had this sensation, like you're looking at something and you know it's there, but you can't do anything. You can be there and you can look into the eye, but it's not going to solve anything.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate.
And I also had the experience of releasing family system tensions from my own body while I was being treated with biodynamic craniosacral therapy, or even during TRE when I was practicing. No? So there was a felt sensation that something that was resolved is belong to the system, but not this personal body, so to speak. That I think can happen the same in internal family systems, because you're embodying a bigger system.
Sure.
In his own body. And this is what led me to I wrote a book, which in Spanish is Reconecta con tu cuerpo. It could be like reconnect with your body in English. It's not yet in English, unfortunately. And then I had a chapter in this book. It's a 10-chapter essay about healing and many interesting topics with exercises at the end of the chapters. And one chapter was about interbeing or interconnectedness, just like as we spoke about. Interbeing is an expression of Thich Nhat Hanh that speaks about how everything and everyone is really connected on the deep level, and how we are basically incapable of exist without each other. And at the end of this chapter, there was an exercise I've written, and I made a mistake. It's published, and I do take the responsibility for that. Now for the Hungarian edition, I corrected it because I realized that there was a mistake. So this was one of my motivations also to become a practitioner, that if I may correct the mistake, please allow me to do that.
Please do.
And the mistake was that I didn't know that it can be differentiated, that someone who is diseased is not well, and there are ancestors who are well. So for me, this is the biggest revelation of the whole work, because it completely changed how I think about ancestors and ancestral work. And so I did the training, I did the personal work. Everything is based on the personal work of working with my own lineages. And I hope that the service that I said that I want to do, it is being carried out, because I feel that it works. So I think this is where we have the biggest need in our culture. Also getting back to this, the word is like reverence, how we can become honoring, earth honoring culture. Because what we are, and this is what also Gabor Mate says in The Wisdom of Trauma, the documentary that was published a couple of years ago about his work, that we say Mother Earth, but look what we are doing with our mothers. We're destroying it. So how can we change that? And I think when we have that realization, where we can arrive to that realization that the other is not different than I am, there is no difference, then something shifts in our nervous system. It creates a connection, that deep connection that we are looking for. And I also remember with joy of the movie of Dersu Uzala. I don't know if you remember that. It's a movie from Akira Kurosawa, and it tells the...
What's the title?
Dersu Uzala.
Okay, that's one. I'm a big Kurosawa fan, but I somehow,
Yeah,
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 okay,
it's a Kurosawa movie. I think it was made around 42. No,
okay,
maybe later. I don't remember, but it tells the story of a hunter who was living in Siberia in Russia, and
mm,
how he was helping some soldiers who were trying to prepare a map in maybe 1900, so around when the century changed, and how he really calls like Mr. Tiger, the tiger, and he says that, oh, so the wind is speaking to me. Everybody is a person. Everything is a person for
uh-huh,
him. So the trees, the lake,
right, right,
the rain. So he is really connected, because this connectedness helps him to find the path and create the maps. So he's living interconnected to all
mm,
those that surrounds him. So it's a beautiful. I think it has two parts. The movie,
mm.
if I remember well, it is really a great one. It's a slow movie, so you really need like a nice
Yeah,
drink
yeah,
and just sit and
all of
enjoy
them,
it.
many of them are. But oh, that's great. Ooh, that's adding that one immediately to the list. Very cool.
Yeah, yeah. So mm, returning to your question,
Hmm.
what was your question?
Well, I was asking you, what led you into it, and
Yeah, what
you
led
gave,
me?
and it
So
sounded,
this one,
so
yeah,
you sound like you had done some, family constellations and an orientation towards your family system and your ancestors.
yeah,
But then this particular, this pivotal distinction of that some of your ancestors can be utilized, are well and are wanting to help propagate healing, and some ancestors may not be well. And then, of course, your own personal family, the World War II and is recent. I mean, that's a on a long time, on a family lineage time scale. That's sort of like just now in terms of
yes,
a trauma in the lineage. Um,
yes.
yeah,
It's just now, like civil war
right.
in
That's
many
right.
countries or in the USA. So
Right.
it's there are a lot of history where I don't think that we have the possibility to see it without political charge, which is
Hmm.
okay, because this is how we live and this is our society.
Sure.
But in our personal mythology, or I'm using deliberately this word,
Hmm.
because we are telling the history of our family in our mind, and we have an interpretation, and we may have a felt sensation connecting with different parts of the story.
Hmm.
But I think that the worst thing is when we don't know from what we are suffering. So whenever we can get an understanding of what is happening, it always helps the healing.
Hmm.
And I have actually in therapy a lot of clients who have different difficulties with patterns of thoughts or patterns repeating in the family, um, self-harming patterns as well.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's difficult to deal with it, because it involves also to create a safe space for the person.
Right.
Safe space. If I don't feel safe in my own body and I don't feel safe in my own personal space, we know that from neurosciences that it is very difficult. So first, of course, I need this felt sensation in the body with the nervous system to regulate it well. But
Hmm.
then how will I protect myself from unseen things if I believe that there are unseen things around me?
Right.
Or if I am sensitive to feel that there are some unseen things? And it's not like, so don't get me wrong, it's not like, oh, I may have my grandmother standing there. I don't care. She's
Hmm.
made there. Now we're
Hmm.
friends. It's good.
Hmm.
But whenever there is a very concrete sensation that you say that, oh, this is something that makes me think about my grandmother with what I'm working with, and you have a felt sensation in the body,
Hmm.
it could be something connected to her, and it could be something connected to her lineage. So for me, the body is always like a compass, because when there is a resonance in the body, it really is happening. You can't deny it.
Mm-hmm.
While when it is in the mind, then it's like, oh, is it illusion? Is it really happening?
Totally. Well, just a quick comment there, because so in IFS, internal family systems, a term that we use is trailhead. And trailhead, like the at the beginning of a hike, there's a trailhead, and then that that's the hike, or it's the signal that there's some path to follow. And in internal family systems work, we're often we get a trailhead, which could be a thought, it could be a body sensation, but it's something, it seems significant, and it seems that, hey, and usually the client themselves, they think, that seems significant, we should sort of follow that. And so I wonder if that might be a little similar to what you're describing right now.
Yes, I think so. And it's usually like the first thing that comes to you, like the intuition.
Sure.
That's something that could be significant, and maybe it's not. So, of course, as a ritual work, the challenge is to see if this is something that I'm making up,
right,
or is it really happening? This is the question most of the persons I'm working with ask, and this is the question I was asking as well in the beginning. Like, holy shit, I'm making this up?
Mm-hmm. Right. Of course.
Yeah, because it's like it could be like my mind is inventing stories and so on. But then I kept showing up, and I did the process. There's a short course that someone can do as part of the network, to say so, the Ancestral Medicine Network. It is an online course recorded with lessons.
That anybody can access.
Yes.
Oh, great!
Exactly.
We'll put
So
that.
there's a short course, and you can buy it, access it, and it's amazing. I started with that as well, but then I realized that I can't do it alone. I need someone to be my witness, to hold me, because this is a luxury. We know, Alex, we work with people. It's so good when someone holds us.
Mm-hmm.
We also need that. And it was really a joy to work with a practitioner I was working with, because first of all, she cleared all my doubts, and she guided me, and offered the security that, okay, maybe you're making it up. What's the difference? Does it make you feel better? Mm-hmm. Yes. So now It's like, if it's a self-suiting, well, it's quite a harmless self-suiting. So I think it's a good practice. If it's something that is real, which I believe is real, then it's a fuel to the passion, like the fire of life, this fire that we keep going all together. It's a huge fire. Like maybe someone pours a little water on it, but there are others who put more nutrition to the fire, and I think this is it, because when we understand that along the history there has been done a cultural damage on every nation, nobody is outside of this, cultural, religional damage, so like the war between men and women, like all the and damage in the understanding of impact that has not been taken care of. This is what I understand under damage. Not like we are broken or something like that. No, we are not broken. So everything in this way can be held and taken care of and repaired. So it's rather like a reconnection work, not a complete, okay, I'm going to write this out because it's wrong, because this is not the way to do it.
Right. So in a way, I think what you might be saying is that it's the connection, the reconnection is what's so critical, and of course there's narrative, there's thoughts, there's conversation that's part of that process, but at a fundamental level, it's the reconnecting that may be the most important quality. Is that, did I catch you?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for being my translator of ideas. Yeah. Yeah, it's reconnecting because this is what empowers us.
Okay. Super cool. So I wonder, I mentioned that I haven't done it, and I want to, and I want to do it with you, and you've so kindly offered. So we're not going to do that right now, but um, but maybe you could share a little bit, or for anybody listening who's wondering, well, what would that be like if I worked with somebody or with Anna? How would you describe how does it begin? Does somebody need to do some preparation work? What's it like to go through to do some of this work with a facilitator like you?
So it can be done online.
Okay.
Absolutely. You may like to have a candle or something, any object that is significant for you in your space. It's good to be alone, so you have the space for your own self, a closed space, not in a park. And we would start with me getting to know a little bit your family history. But even before that, as you speak about a ritual space, you may witness me offering a prayer to all and invoking all my healthy and well ancestors with your own healthy and well ancestors to create a safe space and allow us to work together on this process that we call ancestral lineage healing. And then we would start the work of understanding of to what extent do you know your own family history. It is possible that you are an adoptee and you can still do this work. You can do the work with the blood lineages that you don't know, and you can do the work with those lineages of your parents who adopted you, so your adopted lineages. And there are practitioners as well who are adoptees, and they really focus on this work.
I see.
So it is not an obstacle if you're coming from these difficulties. And then we always start with a grounding, because we really want to be present in the body. And we need also the mind to be present, because it is not an ecstatic work. It is not a shamanic work. We stay present all the time. You may close your eyes to connect more or to tune in more. There is an invocation of a helping power. A helping power is something or someone that is an energy, or it can be an animal, a plant, something that helps you to ground and clean your personal space and protect you. It cannot be anyone diseased or any living human. So usually, sometimes it is an archangel, sometimes it is a tree, sometimes it is one of the sacred medicine plants, if you're a practitioner. So it can be many, many things. It can be animals as well. And then it is very important to create this personal safe space. And this is easier for someone and could be more difficult to another person. So we would work on that until it is sound and created. And usually if there is a time, this is why the first session is 90 minutes, because we will do until here, the first session. And what is coming also can be part of the first session, the assessment of the lineages. This is like the first step, no? How are my different lineages? And on a scale from 0 to 10, which is 0 or 1, very bad state, 10 energetically, 10, they are really good, shiny, bright, really well, really healthy.
Okay.
I would guide you to turn to each lineages from your protected space and to do the assessment. And once the assessment is done, which usually we finish here on the first session, it is possible to follow, but usually time doesn't allow us to do more. So on the second session, what we would do is to come back again. I would open our space with a prayer. You can join in always. I leave space for that. And then we would come back to your own personal space, clean it again. So this is something that we always do. Get protection, work with your helping power. And from then we would do the next step, which is defining with which lineage you would like to work with. And usually we want to work with the most messed up. And this is not a good advice. Why? Because we really want to gather practice and power. When we turn to those where the most difficulties lay.
So you're saying you suggest not starting with the most messed up, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
interesting. I like that. Just to briefly interject, I like that as an idea because it's the same way that I approach trauma work, especially through somatic experiencing with my clients. It's like, hey, let's get good at some easy stuff, some stuff that's not so, and let's sort of get some of our tools going, get the nervous system involved, get kind of a head of steam. Then later on, if we work with something that's more challenging, it will be a lot easier because of what we did to begin with. So anyway, I like that as an idea.
yes.
Yeah.
I find it very healthy.
Mhm.
It is really good. And then when you choose with which lineage you will work,
Yeah.
then comes the following step to look for an ancestral guide on that lineage.
Okay.
And this sometimes is challenging, sometimes not. What is the experience is that if you are someone living in a Western culture, that healthy ancestor on that specific lineage very easily could have lived like 1,500 years ago, or
Okay.
maybe 2,000-3,000 years ago.
Right.
So we're really looking for someone who is energetically well, bright, healthy, and
Right.
usually it is easily identifiable, even if you're not literal in the energy language, just
Okay.
to say it like that. So
Okay.
it's sometimes we need to recheck it, but usually it's easy. And when we get the connection or when you get the connection with this ancestral guide, that is already something very material in the way of getting a felt sensation of a connection
Mhm.
that is nourishing you.
Okay.
So it is beautiful. And then this is the following step that we can, if time allows, it can still happen some part in this second session. If not, we go in the following session, would happen to ask this ancestral guide to help us to create a healing space for all the lineage that comes after them. So the first person from them until the last deceased person behind us. So it could be our grandfather, it could be our great-grandfather, it could be our parents, but
Okay.
only those who have passed away gather together on this healing space. So it is
I
like a
see.
cocoon
Yep.
created by all those ancestors who are already well.
I see. Okay.
And our job is to step back and do nothing and observe,
I
because
see.
we don't do the work. So this is the part I love, because what we do, how can I help? I want to do it. That's my job. No. So usually when you ask your ancestral guide, it's like, how can I help? Please step back and let us do the work.
Okay. So our job is to convene the space, create the environment, and then to observe, to witness.
Yes, our job is to reconnect.
Okay.
And when the reconnection is taking place and we ask the right questions, the work can take place. And sometimes we can also do something in our lives, in our daily lives, like creating a little altar with different elements or with flowers. So usually this is where we connect to the earth honoring practices that most of our ancestors had a very deep relationship with the earth where they were born. They were in partnership with the earth. They lived about it and they honored it. So this is something that could wake up during these sessions in ourselves, that we desire to spend more time in nature. We desire to reconnect with all that space that it is outside of the buildings where we live. Or we desire to reconnect with the motherland of our ancestors. That's also a possibility. And then in the following sessions, what happens is that we can say that there are the ancient ancestors, maybe lived like 100,000 years ago, maybe until 40,000 years ago, so on. So these are numbers that the mind is not really capable to receive.
Right.
But there are a lot of people. They are usually quite well. But the healing process starts from them. So they would offer prayers and any necessities for those who are held in the healing space.
Okay.
And then you always communicate with your ancestral guide, and they know when one or more grandmothers or grandfathers are ready to come out from this healing space.
Okay.
And this is when the ancestralization happens. So when they are reconnected, healed, cleaned, when their energy level is brought up, then the ancient ones will receive those who could not go through the ancestralization process yet.
Mm-hmm.
And they would be welcome in the family of our ancestors, which are a lot of people again.
Right.
So
Right.
they appear like one because many times this is how it is easier for our mind to perceive.
Sure.
But usually there are a lot of them. They are like a tribe.
Multitudes, like a tribe.
Exactly, a multitude.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this would continue until we get to like a couple of 1,000 years ago, and then we come closer until we go to the recent ones, recent ancestors, those maybe 6 or 7 generations who we may still remember their names, who have passed away. And usually there we slow down, and it's one by one that they emerge from this healing space because they may have more stories to share.
I see. So it's like, so the more recent in time, it's like there's more, because we know their lives, we know their names. It's like it gets a little bit more specific.
Yes.
As we get closer to our own lifetimes.
There are also more impact.
Okay.
Because maybe our grandparents were influenced greatly with their great-grandparents, and now we are the 5th generation. So there is a lot more closeness because of the closeness of time as well. And there is always space of learning about the burdens one family lineage may take with them for thousands of years sometimes, and the blessings as well, because they always go together. So it's a possibility to also understand where cultural difficulty is coming from, or why we don't feel good in a certain country around certain languages, or what are the prejudices that we have. So it's really interesting how we get there. And once the lineage is arriving to this healed, reconnected state, the practice continues with allowing the blessings to flow down until ourselves and even past ourselves to our family, extended family, children, animals, everything. And if we do this work with several lineages, speaking about blood lineages or those who adopted us, there is also a way to harmonize different lineages, which opens up a lot of energy in our lives that we can utilize maybe better.
Right.
And there is also a way to connect with other than blood ancestors, because we may have different ancestors, or maybe...
Well, that was a question I had, was that you're referring to blood lineages, but what if, for example, you felt a connection to a particular lineage of some other sort? Like in my case, there's a Zen lineage, a Buddhist lineage that feels like a lineage to me. It's not genetic or blood based, and I wonder if is that ever included in this kind of work?
Yes, absolutely. That is your spiritual lineage, where you feel included, where you feel that you belong. So you can absolutely work with that.
Got it.
As much as with the different ancestors of the earth where we are. You can connect with them as well. So there is a beautiful horizon with whom we can get in relationship with. And I think this is the key, getting in relationship with, reclaiming the power of being connected to all those powers who gave life to us.
Nice. In the introduction, or the first chapter of Daniel's book, Ancestral Medicine, he made a comment that I thought was funny, but also I appreciated, which was, he said, you may be thinking sort of, who is this applicable for, and he was saying basically like there could be a misconception that, well, your ancestors need to come knocking, you need to have some sign from the universe or a sign from your ancestors. And his comment was, it's much more simple than that. There's nothing wrong with just, even if you've never had a particular interest, you've never thought about but for some reason now you're curious. There's nothing wrong with just going and knocking on the door and finding out what is there. And I thought that was funny because it was probably true for many people, that yeah, there's not, that this is not something that they thought that much about. But I also appreciated it as sort of like the accessibility, that from his perspective, and it's like, hey, they're there. This fabric of humanity is there, and if you're interested in accessing it consciously, you don't need special permission or some particular reason. Just go ahead and develop this relationship. So I kind of liked that.
Yes, it is accessible to anyone, and it is available, and you can very easily realize that there is a door you've never seen before, but there is a door and you can knock on it. This is, I think, also the beauty that it is available.
Right. Well, I wonder, because sometimes I think about, I guess I'll use IFS, or actually I'll use somatic experiencing or TRE as an example. Of course, one major reason to come to a modality is because of wanting of some sort of healing, a trauma, a wound, whatever. To me, this is true in body work, cranial. So one reason is there's a pain or there's an injury or an emotional, but to me, another reason is no, that's not really it. But you're just interested in what's happening in the body, or how's my tremor mechanism, or somatic experiencing is just as valuable for somebody, even if it's not so much trauma to work with. It's just a chance to connect with the felt sense and everything that goes along with it. And I'm guessing this is the same here in that some people might come to it because there's an acute reason that they know there's some major trauma in their family line, and they must find a way to work with it. But other people might enter into it without an acute need, yet there's many benefits that come out of it. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. There are a lot of mental health practitioner colleagues who are also ancestral medicine practitioners, and we have like a gathering every month where we meet and share and understand what we're facing with. And what we agree is that, yes, sometimes you need therapy, but sometimes your ancestors can work like your elders who you go for advice. And they're really good advices. So as well as you say that sometimes we have our curiosity and we really want to know, and it is a good enough reason to engage with, always, like curiosity, playfulness.
Sure.
It's like, this is a beautiful big word and I want to get a deeper understanding. That's
Right.
A beautiful way to connect with that.
Yeah.
And also, in this practice, curiosity is a great tool because this is what helps us. Sometimes we are offered more story, sometimes we are offered resolution. So It's not always about the story. Sometimes it's like, okay, it's done. It doesn't matter. You don't need to understand. So we're again back to TRE, IFS, somatic experiencing, craniosacral work, body work. It doesn't matter if you understand. It doesn't matter if you know. You don't need to know. You don't need to know everything that your ancestors 30,000 years ago went through, or maybe just 2,000 years ago. But you may know some important things that help you to understand who you are today and why. So I think it is beautiful because it's like knowing yourself, it's a never-ending story. I think already Jung said that unconscious is like huge, but I think ancestral medicine is like also reconnecting a little with the unconscious part of humanity, all the wisdom, all the knowledge. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Wow. To me, it's so cool. Is there anything we miss? Anything else you want to make sure we capture?
Yeah, maybe one thing to close with, I think that we're close to our time, is that for me, an important question I used to put to myself as well as my clients, I like to ask them, is when we're working with a modality, so how does it impact your life that you're doing this practice? And if it changes for better, if your relationships become better, if your relationship with yourself is better, or you feel lighter or happier, I think it's worth it. So for me, this is important because also ancestral medicine can change our lives unexpectedly in our physical realm as well, because the DNA connects to all these lineages. So yeah, that's the last part.
Okay. All right. That well taken. Well, awesome. Thank you for taking time for this conversation. And as mentioned at the beginning, Anna's working with us now. She does this work. She does it online. I'm signing myself up myself because I'm excited to knock on that door, so to speak. So, Anna, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it greatly.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Red Beard Embodiment Podcast. To learn more, visit us at redbeardsomatictherapy.com or send me an email at alex@redbeardsomatictherapy.com. If today's conversation resonated with you, help spread the word by subscribing and sharing with others. Hope to see you next time.